what we're consciously experiencing. And so conscious will is another area that I spend a lot of time talking about in the docuseries, because we tend to have this intuition. There are many illusions that are kind of wrapped up into one. And to my mind, they are all related to how we view consciousness. So the idea of conscious will, the idea of being a self that is solid across time, which is also another thing that is basically generated by the brain. There's a change blindness that happens across time that causes us to feel like we're this stable entity that's kind of consuming our conscious experiences over time, rather than them being generated anew in each moment. And again, because it's the thing we are conscious of and the only thing we can talk about or think about, because it's the only part that enters this stream of memory that we have access to, we're kind of led to believe that all of that is what consciousness is. And so my first question was really, is it possible that consciousness is much more simple than all of this? And because there are all these neuroscientific studies that show us that what we experience to be our conscious experience is really at the tail end of most of this brain processing. It's not causal in the way we feel it is. We think we've evolved consciousness based on the behavior we think it's associated with, when in reality it's possible that it's simply how these processes feel, but the processes are just playing out. And the conscious experience of them is not necessarily the thing that's driving them.
Okay, so I want to, I get all that. I think it's super important, and it is probably, like you say, underappreciated. I want to hear, therefore, we should take consciousness as fundamental.
Okay. So again, I mean, it takes longer than a podcast interview to get all the way there. But once you've realized the ways in which we could be wrong about our assumptions about what consciousness is, and you start asking, where does it make sense for it to emerge in nature? What I discovered was that you run into paradoxes wherever you try to place that emergence, and that you run into the same arguments for why it doesn't make sense to assume there. And so it's kind of like it just by necessity goes all the way to the bottom. There's no place at which it makes sense to put it. And so I became convinced that the most rational answer was all the way down. And I became convinced of that really against my will,
as it were.
And it's only after kind of marinating in this for the last 5 years that I've kind of started to develop an intuition for it and can feel how it makes sense. But yeah, it was really just logical thought experiments that brought me there, that I had to kind of fight my rational mind and my intuitions on. And that actually, I think I could be wrong about it. And it was, I'm sure I mentioned to you when I called you up to record a conversation for my docuseries, I don't want to waste time. So I'd like to be talked out of this, and so I've been attempting also to talk to people who disagree with me, so that I can see if there's an error in my thinking. So I can see if, it actually, there's a good reason to not actually follow these questions any further.
So good. So that, I think you've motivated it very, very well. Then the question is, can we build up a sensible understanding of what it implies to say this? So of course, the constant thing that I've talked about and you've heard me talk about is, look, we understand how atoms behave. We understand those laws of physics very well. And part of that behavior of atoms is that I'm made of atoms. And when I'm talking to you here, when I'm reporting my conscious experiences, I am a collection of atoms obeying the laws of physics. So
absolutely,
how in this understanding do my conscious experiences affect my behavior, my reporting, my physical moving around in the world?
How do your conscious experiences affect those?
Yeah, if consciousness is fundamental and you think that, consciousness